Now, Colonel Richard Kemp is the former commander of the British forces in Afghanistan and author of Attack State Red. He's a former member of the UK Joint Intelligence Committee and naturally has a view on the meaning of the execution of Osama Bin Laden. Colonel Kemp joins us now. Colonel Kemp, thanks very much for joining us. I called it an execution. What would you call it?
Well, I don't think any of us know exactly what happened in that compound, but I think the mission, as far as the Americans have explained it, was to go in and to kill or capture Bin Laden, and they did one of those two things. I know there's been a lot of controversy about whether they should or should not have attempted to take him alive or did attempt to take him alive, but I think he needed to be neutralized. He needed to either be killed or captured, and that's what happened to him.
Sure. I mean, I agree with that. If you had heard the show earlier, you'd know that's basically my position too. But from a public relations point of view, from a political point of view, it would have been far better to take him alive, and it would appear, absent photographs and footage, that they did have that opportunity but didn't take it. Why do you think they didn't take it?
Well, I really don't know whether that is the case or not. I mean, I think not many people have been in that situation where you're getting out of a helicopter in a foreign country into an unknown situation where perhaps there is shooting, there's smoke, there's people moving around, there's your own people moving around, there's perhaps a risk of being shot, a risk of somebody blowing up a suicide vest, as they have done in the past in protecting what are known as high-value targets. I think without having more facts as to what happened, I think it's very hard to judge it. In my opinion, and I can't speak for the way the Americans operated here, but if I was commanding an operation like that or taking part in it, I believe it would be legitimate to have killed Bin Laden. If
legitimate, no doubt.
If he'd attempted to surrender, then I think it would have been probably unlawful to have killed him when he was attempting to surrender. It would have been against the laws of war, but we don't know whether that happened or not.
Well, of course, the reason, Colonel, that we don't know is because the US, who watched it all live in real time, the President and the Secretary of State and the other top brass, the Vice President, are all photographed watching it in real time. So they know what happened, but they will not share that with the rest of us.
I know. I find it very strange to... We've heard so many conflicting accounts, and I can understand, again, the fog of war and how maybe, an incorrect account comes back first, that then has to be corrected. I can understand that. I've been in that situation myself, and I've been guilty myself of having to change things when facts come to light. Probably guilty is not the right word, but you have to do it sometimes. But I have to say I've been very surprised by the number of, I think we've heard at one point that there was footage. We've now heard there isn't footage. So I just can't interpret that. I don't know what the agenda is there. I do believe that in some ways it would have been better to have him stand trial. It would have been better to have arraigned him in front of, a properly constituted court. On the other hand, I do feel that had he been held, the trial would have gone on a long time. The pre-trial proceeding, we could have been talking about holding him for a couple of years, in which perhaps, and I think it's quite likely, people would have been taken hostage, have been threatened to kill them, perhaps killed them if they hadn't released Bin Laden. I think in some ways, and I'm not saying whether it is lawful or unlawful, in some ways it is much more convenient that he wasn't taken alive and that his body is then disposed of. There is no shrine to terrorism. There is no risk of people being kidnapped in order to force his release or anything like that. So there is in some ways a neatness to it, and as long as it was done lawfully, then I think that I don't have a problem with it. But I do understand why some people do.
Colonel Richard Kemp, the former commander of the British forces in Afghanistan and author of Attack State Red, thank you very much indeed for joining us. Well, what do you think about what Colonel Kemp said? And is this not the point at which we should declare that the war in Afghanistan is over? After all, we went there because of the presence there of Osama Bin Laden, which had a tremendous piquancy for me because, of course, we had sent Osama Bin Laden into Afghanistan in the first place. And it seemed to me grotesquely unfair to punish the Afghan people twice. First, by sending Bin Laden there, and secondly, by punishing them because Bin Laden was there. But now that he's dead, and now that it turns out he was never in Afghanistan for the last 6 years, and living, in fact, under the nose of the Pakistani military, would this not be a good time to end the war in Afghanistan? Especially as we're kind of broke